Now, let's get back to where we left off last week. So last week we talked about the concept of Seder, why it's called a Seder, which means order. We talked about the 4 cups of wine and the idea that wine is similar to the neshama, that it goes through this process of going from good to great, through the challenges, through the pressing and the squeezing and all that. We talked about the yachatz a little bit, the breaking. Did we talk about the breaking of the matzah? Did we talk about that? No, we didn't. Oh, wow. Are we in for a treat? Did we talk about karpas at all? Dipping the no. Oh wow, we're in for lots of treats, guys.
Eating a lot.
Okay, I'm gonna start speaking faster now. Here we go. Okay, everybody ready? I hope you had your cocaine this morning because it's gonna be a crazy ride. Let's go. Okay, so here we go. We're gonna backtrack a little. We're gonna talk about karpas, the third step in the Seder. So we talked about kiddush, right? We talked about the wine and the kiddush.
Right.
That we talked about. Okay, we did not talk about, okay, we wash our hands, it's Kaddish and Orchatz, we wash our hands, and then just 1 second,
We didn't talk about washing hands.
No, we didn't talk about washing hands. We're also not going to talk about that. You're not in for that treat today, I'm sorry. Only so many treats I can hand out in one day. Oh, look at this wonderful lady here who brought us to Haggadah. Thank you so much. What's your name again?
Susan.
Bernstein. Big round of applause for Susan Bernstein. Thank you. No, I really appreciate it because we're going to use it today. Okay, so we're not going to talk about the washing the hands, although that's just delightful too. We are going to talk about the third step of the Haggadah called karpas, where we dip the vegetable in salt water. Here in Michigan, what do you guys use? Parsley. It's weird, I got to be honest with you. But in Michigan, it's normal. In the rest of the world, no one uses. I had never seen parsley my entire life. You use cucumber, potato. I mean, normal stuff. Like, do you ever eat? Yeah, I don't know. Like, you don't normally eat parsley, right? It's not a food.
You chop it up in salads.
Yeah, you use it as like an herb,
yes,
but not as a food. So I'm saying the majority of the world out there, not you guys are totally normal. I love Michigan. That's why I'm here. I'm saying the Michigan custom of eating parsley is just strange because it's not really a vegetable. It's an herb. But keep it up. There we go. Celery. You're more my style. That's right. Okay. Celery or potatoes or cucumber. Potatoes actually go really well with salt water because potatoes always need a little salt for flavor. But if you've been doing parsley, don't worry. It's okay. You got lots of company here in Michigan. Okay. Now, what is the deal with dipping of the vegetable or the herb in the salt water? So the standard explanation is that it's to remember the tears. Tears taste salty. It's to remember the tears of the Jewish people while they were working in Egypt. However, Rabbeinu Manoach, an early commentator from the 13th century, I think it would be, very, very long ago, he says a very interesting insight. He says that the idea of the karpas is to remind us of the sale of Joseph. Now remember, when Joseph was sold, they took off his garment. He used to wear that multicolored tunic, and they dipped it in the blood of an animal. And they brought it to their father, to Jacob, and said, "Hey, look, do you recognize this? It looks like your son's tunic. It looks like he was eaten by an animal or something." You guys remember that part?
Yeah.
And remember that the story of Joseph, the sale of Joseph, is actually, in a way, what kickstarts the entire Jews going down to Egypt where they were enslaved. Now, so that there's some sort of connection here to the Egyptian slavery, i.e. what brought them into the slavery was the sale of Joseph, which involved the dipping of the garment into the blood. Why is that an important part of the early part of the Seder? Says Rabbeinu Manoach, listen to this amazing insight. Seders is when families come together. Now, I don't know about you, but when most families come together, there's issues that got to be worked out, There's Uncle Harry, who still is not over the fact that at my bar mitzvah, I didn't mention him in the speech. I'm sorry, Uncle Harry, we've been through this before. I had a lot of people to mention, and I couldn't read, and my glasses fell off, and you escaped, and there's Aunt Matilda, who won't stop nagging everybody to get married, and so on and so forth, right? There's all kinds of family issues, and when family comes together, that's often a time where some of those issues can flare up. It's very easy that, especially with all the stress of a Seder, people put all this time preparing it, the tensions will flare, somebody will get angry at somebody else, somebody will yell at somebody else. I had a story last year, someone told me at their Seder, so one of the kids was being very disrespectful, and a different one of the uncles reprimanded him. I think he was playing with his phone or texting with his phone, and the other person told him to put it away, and the father of that kid got angry. "How dare you tell my child what to do?" And he started walking out. The Seder is a place where, there's a lot of things that can go wrong. A lot of family tensions that can come to the boil. Rabbeinu Manoch says we start the Pesach Seder off with karpas, it's not started off, the third step in is karpas, to remind us that had the Jews not gotten into this little rivalry with their brother, there would never have been a slavery in Egypt. That was all brought about by the sale of Joseph. So by the karpas, we dip the vegetables into the salt water to remember the dipping done by the brothers at the sale of Joseph, which is the sort of the early seeds of the Egyptian slavery, to remind us that our redemption, and we're going to talk about redemption a little bit more in depth today, our redemption comes from being able to be together. As a matter of fact, our entire exile right now, the sages tell us that the reason why we're in exile right now is because of baseless hatred. So it's sort of like, we're going to have a long meal now. There's going to be a lot of talking, a lot of conversation, a lot of food, a lot of relatives. Let's keep our cool. Let's remember the sale of Joseph and see what family rivalries can cause, family stress can cause. So it's sort of a way to start off your Seder with a reminder, hey, orange light. Proceed with caution. This is the most important thing at the end of the day of this Seder, is that we should all walk out of here happy. Everyone should walk out of here with a greater feeling of unity with the family and friends at our Seder, and God forbid not walk out feeling slighted, angry, insulted, etc., etc. So it's sort of giving us a prelude and reminding us that the whole exile, the whole slavery in Egypt was kickstarted by family rivalry. Okay, that is the karpas. So it's a yellow light flashing at the beginning of the Seder saying, everybody keep your cool. Alrighty. Next, yachatz. We break the middle matzah and we hide the bigger half for later. Now my Zaidi, this is his moment to shine at the Seder, because he's waiting almost all year for my father to say, everybody please break your matzah and hide the bigger half for later. And as soon as my father says those words, my grandfather says, you can't have a bigger half. If it's bigger, it's not a half, right? It's 60-40, or So that's my Zaidi's moment to shine. And one of my Zaidi's many moments to shine. He likes to point out that you cannot have a bigger half, which is entirely true. So let's repeat that. We break the middle matzah and hide the bigger portion.
You can't have a half.
Exactly, you can't have a bigger half. So you hide the bigger portion. What's the idea over here? So there's a great sage known as the Chassam Sofer. He lived in the 19th and 20th centuries. He lived in Israel at the end of his life, and he says a very interesting idea. The Passover Seder is not just a celebration of a redemption, a national redemption that occurred 3,326, whatever it is, years ago. No, it's 30, many years ago. Over 3,300 years ago. Because as Jews, we don't really just celebrate anything just because it happened. We celebrate things because they're occurring, they're happening, and they're going to happen. On Passover, when we remember the amazing miracles that God did for the Jewish people when He took us out of Egypt, where Moses came to Pharaoh with a bold proclamation, so says God, B'ni Bechori Yisrael, my firstborn child is Israel. And we know that not only did we have the redemption then, but we are going to have the redemption once again in the future. The Talmud tells us, B'Nisan Nigalu, in the month of Nisan we were redeemed, U'B'Nisan Asidin Lihigael, and in Nisan we will be redeemed again in the future. So the Pesach Seder is not only a time to celebrate the past redemption, but also to hope for, to yearn for, to pray for the coming redemption. And as a matter of fact, at the end of Magid, at the end of the portion of the Haggadah where we tell over the story, we say Hallel. We say a beautiful few psalms filled with praise to God. And then we conclude with a blessing. And in that blessing we say the following. Oh, guess what? This is the child's Haggadah. And it doesn't have that blessing. That being said... oh wait, no, of course it does. Here we go. Here is the blessing that we say right before, at the end of the whole long telling over of the story. We say, "Blessed are you, Hashem, our God, King of the universe, who has saved us and has saved our ancestors from Egypt, and let us reach this night when we eat matzah and maror." That's going in the past. "Hashem, our God and God of our ancestors, let us also celebrate the festivals in the future in peace. May we rebuild your city, Jerusalem, happily. And may we serve you with joy. In Jerusalem we will eat the offerings and the Korban Pesach, the Paschal Lamb. Then we will sing a new song of praise to you for saving us. Blessed are you, Hashem, who has saved Israel." The Seder is not just about celebrating the past, but also recognizing that just like God did it for us in the past, He will do it for us once again. We are still Israel, His firstborn son. And therefore, we use the Seder as a springboard towards our yearning for a time of national redemption when the Jews will be lifted out of this exile. When we will no longer have to live in a world that is becoming increasingly naked in their anti-Semitism. And therefore, we break the middle matzah. And we keep the smaller portion on our table. The smaller portion represents the redemption that already occurred, the one that's on the table, so to speak. The bigger portion represents the redemption that will be. Because the prophet tells us that when the final Messiah will come, the miracles will be so great that they will so far eclipse the miracles that we experienced with Egypt, that no longer will people say, "Oh wow, I swear to you by God of Israel who took them out of Egypt," because those miracles will be small fry. Instead they'll say, "Oh, by the God of Israel who took the Jews out of all the hundreds of lands they lived on in the diaspora." Imagine you go to a magic show, David Blaine or something, right? And he takes out this deck of cards and he says, "Here, pick any card you want." And you pick a card and it's the 7 of clubs. And he says, "Don't show me," and you don't show him. And he says, "Okay, now I want you to put it in your pocket." And you put it in your pocket and suddenly, David Blaine pulls the card out of his ear. Like, okay, great applause. That's amazing. It's an amazing trick, right? Wow. I put the card in my pocket and he pulled it out of his ear. Amazing. But then, and you tell people about this amazing experience you had at the David Blaine show. But then you go to another show of his, and at that show he does a far greater trick. What does he do? On stage, he takes out a chainsaw. And in front of the entire audience, with the chainsaw, first he cuts a couple apples, so you should know that it's real, right? They always like to do it with swords or glass. They cut a couple apples, and then he takes the chainsaw, swings it around, cuts off his entire head. There's blood spreading all over the place. His head is on the floor. His headless body walks over to his head on the floor, picks it up, puts it back on, screws it on tight, and he looks and he takes a bow. "Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. That is amazing." Whenever you talk about David Blaine to your friends, you're no longer going to talk about the card trick that he pulled the club of 7s out of his ear. Whoopity-doo. You're going to say, "I saw David Blaine decapitate himself and put himself back together again." The miracles that are going to occur at the final redemption, says the prophet, are going to be so absolutely great. No one's going to sit there and say, "Oh, the God of the Jews, He's amazing. He brought frogs and lice and pestilence and hail." Be small fry. The miracles are going to be so great that people are going to say, "Oh, the God of Israel, who took Jews from 137 lands that they were living in, and miraculously saved them all." I don't even know what the miracles are going to be. They're going to be so great. So we hide the bigger half, bigger portion. We hide the bigger portion of the Afikomen. Because the Afikomen represents the Geula Asida, the redemption that will occur. And it's the bigger redemption. Far greater. So on the table, we celebrate the smaller redemption. But hidden away, we recognize with the Afikomen, there's a greater redemption coming. It's a beautiful idea about the Afikomen, and you feel free to share it with your friends and family. After the Afikomen, after hiding away the Afikomen, we now get to the next portion. we actually start Magid. Magid is the telling over of the story. Where does the word Magid come? The Torah says, "V'higadata lebincha bayomahu leimar," and you shall tell over to your son on that day, saying, "Bavur ze'al salib," for this God did for me when He took me out of Egypt. One of the mitzvahs, the biblical commandments of the day, is to tell over the story. Now, by the way, I think I may have to retract. Last week I told you guys that the simplest way to make Kiddush is just make a Borei Pri Hagafan, correct?
Yeah.
I think I was wrong on that. I think there needs to be some sort of verbalization that you're doing that to sanctify the Sabbath. I tried to just figure it out today before I came, realizing I was going to speak to you guys again. I don't know for sure, but definitely you want to add. Remember we said the easy way, just make a Borei Pri Hagafan. You did it this week, just the Borei Pri Hagafan? You guys are awesome. You guys are really awesome. But here, I'll just add, if you don't mind, just verbalize in English that you're having this special cup of wine to sanctify the Shabbos day that celebrates God creating the world in 6 days and resting on the
And
seventh.
what is that in Beivri?
Kiddush.
Yeah, I know that. I mean, what are the words that you just said? Which part of the actual Yom HaShishi is that?
So Yom HaShishi, you say Yom HaShishi, Vayechulu HaShamayim V'Haaretz V'Chol Tzavam, and God completed all the creating of the heavens and the earth. And God finished on the seventh day. And God rested on the seventh day from all the work that He did.
So if you say those two segments?
So you're basically saying exactly.
And then you go right to
the Kiddush.
Yeah.
Now again, if you used to say the whole thing and you're used to saying it, by all means, please say the whole thing. But I'm saying, if you want to remember, we're trying to make everybody here a super Jew. That's the goal. I'm working on it myself too. And I'm trying to say, what is the lowest threshold, the lowest barrier for Kiddush? So you have to say the guffen on the cup of wine and make some sort of mention that you're doing this to sanctify the Sabbath day, which celebrates the fact that God created the world in 6 days and rested on the seventh. Okay, and you can do that part in English. Okay.
Rabbi, you also say the Shechianu?
That's only the first night.
Shechianu is on Passover, you say the Shechianu.
Okay.
On a regular Shabbos, you don't say Shechianu. Shechianu is a blessing that we make when something special occurs that does not occur all the time. Shabbos is incredibly special. Incredibly special. But thank God it occurs all the time, which is very important because that's why I'm sane. If we only had Shabbos once every 3 months, I would go crazy in the interim. I need Shabbos to center me, to bring back my balance, to give me that ability to just unplug and recharge my sanity. Okay. And now, my friends, we move into Magid, the telling over of the story. How do we start it? We lift up that broken matzah and we say, Ha lachma anya. This is the bread of affliction. This is the bread of poverty. Di achalu avasana ba'ar de Mitzrayim, that our forefathers ate in the land of Egypt. Kol dichvin yeseh v'yechal. Anybody who is hungry, come and eat. Kol ditzrich yeseh v'yiftach. Whoever is needy, come and celebrate Pesach with us. Hashtahacha, this year we're here. Lashana haba ba'ar de Yisrael, next year in Israel. Hashta avdi, this year we are servants, we are slaves. Lashana haba b'nei chorin, next year shall we be free people. Now it seems like there's 3 different statements going on here, and they seem to be totally unconnected. Number 1, this is the bread of affliction that our forefathers ate. That's great. You're telling us about the food that we're going to eat later. Then you have the welcoming in of guests, right? It's not necessarily connected to the picking up of the matzah. Why do you welcome in and by the way, maybe it would have been nice if you welcomed in the guests in the beginning, right? Before you get started. Although, that being said, I don't know if they really need the parsley that bad, okay, Michigan people? And third of all, now, no offense, guys, seriously, if you've been doing parsley for your whole life and your family, I love it, respect it 100%. We like to make light a little bit of it. Okay. Lastly, and then we say this year we're here, and next year in Jerusalem. What's the connection to inviting the guests? Let's weave it all together. Okay. I Googled the words, person who grew up poor. Now there's all kinds of stories out there, people who grew up poor, and now they're very successful, they give charity perhaps, or whatever it is. I found something fascinating. When I Googled it, I found it was an article. It was written by a man who grew up with extreme poverty, and now he's very well off. So what gives him pride? Is it his Aston Martin, or is it his private jet? I don't know exactly what this guy has, but he's very, very wealthy, and he grew up dirt poor. You know what he says? It's amazing. He says, as a man who grew up extremely poor, I measure my success by knowing my kids have this. And what does it show? A picture? Pantries filled with food. In his house, cabinets, pantries, refrigerator filled with food. That's how he measures his success. There's a family that I used to work for in New York. It's there's a patriarch of the family, and he's got 4 daughters. It's fascinating. All of them live within not even a full block. Like one daughter lives here, another daughter lives across the street. Then I think there's one house in between, then another daughter, then another daughter. I mean, literally, almost 5 contiguous houses. And the grandparents, the parents, they have a house just a little bit up the block. At one point, the grandfather was worth $2 billion. I don't know where they are right now, but suffice it to say, they have pantries full of food. One of the mothers was telling me that when they were growing up, they had nothing. The grandfather, the patriarch of the family, went to Harvard for, I think it was business school or law school. No, it was business school. He went to Harvard Business School. And they had nothing. So the mother used to work as a waitress at a banquet hall. And the kids would come to their mother's work so they could eat the leftovers at a banquet hall. Their father missed his own graduation from Harvard because he had to work. And then they became, thank God, fabulously wealthy. But interestingly enough, they all have pantries. Very well-stocked pantries. There's something to it when you grow up without it. We, as the Jewish people, we've eaten the bread of affliction many times. We've eaten the bread of affliction. We've eaten the breads of the world harassing us. We've eaten the breads, and we talk about shtetl life with this sort of romantic, almost Tevye-esque fondness. For the vast majority of people living in shtetls, they were living in abject poverty that we cannot imagine. Families splitting a single potato for dinner was common. I spoke to a Holocaust survivor, and I was asking him, it was right before one of the fast days. I said, fast days? So when I was growing up, fast days were often during the week. There was just no food for dinner that night. We know what it's like to eat the bread of affliction, and that's exactly why we are able to say, therefore, everybody who needs, come and eat. Because of because our fathers and forefathers and great-grandparents ate the bread of affliction, that's why we are so open and say, anyone who's in need, come and join us. The Jewish people are the most generous people in the United States of America as an ethnic group, with the exception of the Mormons, and I'll explain to you why. The Mormon church, you're required to give 10%, and if you don't give 10%, you're kicked out of the church. So by definition, everyone who's part of the Mormon church gives 10%. But other than that, where there's a forced 10%, the Jewish people are the most generous ethnic group in America because we've eaten the bread of affliction. And now we measure our success not by our pantries, but by the pantries that we give away. We measure our success by our ability to say, whoever is in need, come here. And it's interesting, we say 2 things. We say, Kol dichvin yeseh v'yechol, whoever is hungry, come and eat. Kol ditzrich yeseh v'yifsach, whoever is in need, come and join us for the Passover Seder. What's the difference? There are a lot of people who are not hungry. They have plenty of food, but they are in need. They're in need of a spiritual experience. They're in need of a Passover Seder. So we say, if you're hungry, we'll feed you. But much more likely than someone being hungry that you know is that somebody who really needs a Pesach Seder. Somebody who doesn't have where to go, their family doesn't do it, and to them we call out and say, whoever is in need, come and join in our Pesach experience. Called Ditzrich Yeseh V'Yifsach, whoever is in need, come and join our Passover experience. Let's try to think about who in our life does not have a Seder. And make sure that they feel welcome in ours. Because we know what it's like to be on the outside. Yes?
I just have to say this because I'm so proud of this guy. My son-in-law posted on Facebook, and he's got hundreds of friends. Anybody need a Seder, come to us, let me know.
Amazing. Amazing. Beautiful. I hope we got some responses.
I haven't asked him yet. I know that he's invited lots of people who he knows don't have one.
Right.
But I don't know if he got, what kind of a response he got on
Where is he by the Seder? He's by you?
in Franklin.
Okay. Got you. No, I just want to, I'm saying like, I love inviting people to my in-laws. No, I'm kidding. Whoever needs a Seder, come. My mother-in-law is making. No, I'm kidding.
This is the first year that I'm not making a Seder. I have a husband who's not well, and this is
Okay.
the first year. And my daughter has been cooking and freezing for weeks, and she's loving it, and the things that she's thinking of to put on the table, and I got to bring her my frogs, and you know.
Call Huckabut. Call Huckabut to you for raising a daughter like that, and for your son-in-law for being like that. Seriously,
Well,
it's beautiful. So we should try to think of that. We should try to be able to be cognizant like that. Called Ditzrach Yesef Yifsach. So that's the progression from this is the bread of affliction to inviting. Now, by the way, what happens? You say that really? He opens up his mouth, his Facebook page, and he says, "Anybody who's in need, come." What happens if 45 people sign up? What happens if 85 people sign up? There's a lot of people, by the way, who live here now. There's a lot of young professionals who have moved to the city for jobs who don't have family here. Right? What happens? So it's an interesting idea. Like, meaning, it sounds like it's like a false invitation, right? Not by your son-in-law. I'm saying, but in general, when we say this at our Passover seders, imagine we're sitting there at our Passover seder, and we read Halach Manya. There's a knock at the door. 29 people outside. So here's how it goes. There was a great sage named Rabbi Moshe Feinstein who lived, he died in the 1980s. He passed in the 1980s. One of the greatest, possibly the greatest American halachist. He wrote extensively on Jewish law. And his works are incredibly well known and a lot of the basis of American modern law. Because again, all sorts of new questions come up that were never dealt with before because they weren't possible. Like, you know, when you have co-joined twins and you're doing surgery, they didn't have those kind of advanced surgeries before. And all sorts of fascinating modern questions that came across from Moshe Feinstein's desk, and he answered them all brilliantly. When you read his works, you read his responsa, it's unreal, his breadth of knowledge. Somebody one time came to him and asked him a question, and Rabbi Feinstein answered, you should do X, Y, and Z. This man says, but Rabbi Feinstein, he says, there's a Pri Megadim. The Pri Megadim is one of the halachic commentators. He says, there's a Pri Megadim, and this location, you know, it tells him exactly the citation, and it seems to indicate not like that. Rabbi Moshe Feinstein says, okay, thank you for telling me about that, but I'm telling you, this is what you should do. But the man persists. He thinks he caught Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, right? Like on something he didn't know. He's like, but the greatest of respect for the Rav, there's a Pri Megadim, and this location, he cites the location, he says that it really says the opposite of what the Rav is saying. Rav Moshe Feinstein turns to him and says, I learned that Pri Megadim 296 times. And I'm telling you that this is what you should do. Meaning this guy thought he caught Rav Moshe. Rav Moshe wasn't aware of this source. And he's going to tell Rav Moshe, you're making a mistake. Rav Moshe was like, no, he learned it 296 times in his life. And he's saying, I understand exactly what that Pri Megadim is saying, and I'm still telling you, this is the ruling that I gave you, and it's not a conflict with the Pri Megadim. Now, how does a man have time to learn something 296 times? I'll give you another example, the Chafetz Chaim. The Chafetz Chaim, we spoke about him briefly last week. Great sage, passed away in the 1930s. He wrote a halachic work. It's 6 volumes called the Mishnah Brura, which is known to be the gold standard in almost every Torah observant home. And if you have a question, you should open up the Mishnah Brura, and it's very, very lucid, very clear. It's commentary on the Shulchan Aruch, the Jewish Code of Law. And someone once said to him, How do you know you're right? You're writing this whole book that you want to be in every Jewish home, and you want to, you think you're the clarifier of Jewish law for everybody. How do you know you're right? Chofetz Chaim said, before I write anything in this book, I learn up the entire topic 25 times, going from the scripture, through the Mishnah, through the Talmud, through the early commentators, through the later commentaries, through the Jewish Code of Law, through all the commentators on that. I learn up the whole thing 25 times, then I write my commentary, and then I learn it another 25 times just to make sure I got it right. So I'm pretty confident. Who has time to learn everything 50 times? Where does Rav Moshe Feinstein have the time to learn something 296 times? The answer is that when it comes to the spiritual world, all the normal limitations fall away. I can only fit 27 people in my house, except for when I'm having a Pesach Seder. It's a spiritual experience. If I invite people out of the goodness of my heart, 35, 40 people, 60 people could show up, we're going to make it happen. In spiritual endeavors, our powers are infinite. I don't think Rav Moshe Feinstein would have had the time to read War and Peace by Leo Tolstoy 296 times. But when it comes to the spiritual world, our limitations melt away. We are infinitely more capable. So when we sit there at the Seder and we say, whoever is hungry, come and eat. Whoever needs a Pesach Seder, come and join. We mean it. And if yes, it's not a false, hollow invitation. If 30 people were to show up at the door, we would say, welcome, come on in, and we make it happen. That's how spiritual endeavors work. So that's the second step. And then we say, this year we are here, next year in Jerusalem. What's the connection? So, there's a statement in the Talmud. It's found in Bava Basra, tractate Bava Basra, page 10a. It says, it has been taught, Rabbi Yehuda says, great is charity in that it brings the redemption nearer. As it says in Isaiah 61:1, thus says the Lord, Asu, it says, keep judgment and do tzedakah, for my salvation is near to come, and my righteousness to be revealed. God says, when you keep judgment and do tzedakah, do charity, my righteousness is close to being revealed. Redemption is close to coming. We say to God, in the merit of the fact that we truly do open our homes, and we truly do invite everybody in, and we'll find those infinite well springs of energy to do what we got to do to make our Seder available to everybody. In that merit of the amazing kindness that Jews do around Passover, you should open up your gates and bring us home. That's the connection to L'Shana Haba. So again, Halach Ma'anya's 3 parts. This is the bread of affliction, invitation, redemption. And the connection is because we've been afflicted, that's why we are so open to inviting others. We know the pain of affliction, which is why we are so motivated to open up ourselves to others. If you look at, in general, by the way, MAD, Mothers Against Drunk Driving. Who started MAD? A woman who unfortunately lost her daughter to a drunk driver, a 14-year-old daughter to a drunk driver. And she was so deeply affected that she started this organization. She had this fire burning inside of her, and she changed America. She really, MAD, literally changed America. The awareness of drunk driving, the laws against drunk driving, the social inacceptability of drunk driving is all due to this crusading woman who was fueled by the pain of her suffering and her loss. We are fueled by all the affliction that we've been through, therefore we open up wide and invite. And in the merit that we open up wide and invite, God should bring the redemption. That is the connection of those 3 parts to Halach Ma'anya. Next, after Halach Ma'anya, what happens? After Halach Ma'anya, our favorite part of the Seder, is the Ma'nishtana. The question that the children ask. Now I ask you a question. What if there are no children? Who asks the
The
Ma'nishtana?
youngest person there.
The youngest person there. Very good. Correct. What if you're by yourself? Do you ask the Ma'nishtana? So let me read
Call
to
my
you.
son-in-law.
You call your son-in-law? God, he's busy. He's busy. He's got way too many people. He's too. The halacha is as follows, that even if you're by yourself, here we go, you ask yourself the question. The Passover Seder is built up around questions. As a matter of fact, besides for the 4 questions, which are highlighted in a lot of houses, every child asks it, God willing, this year I'll be spending Passover in St. Louis. And there's my in-laws, every other year, my in-laws have their entire family come, which thank God they have 7 children, all of whom are married with children. So you can imagine it's pretty chaotic. Now most families, everyone wants to read the Manashtana, all the kids. So we used to listen to everyone in a row, but there's just too many. So now each family sort of breaks up, and each family has their own little Manashtana session with all the kids asking the Manashtana. A lot of questions. But then we also do other things. There are things that we do on Seder night specifically for the purpose of piquing children's curiosity so that they should ask questions. For example, there are certain places where we just suddenly we're supposed to remove the Pesach plate, the Seder plate, from the table. And then mysteriously it comes back a little while later. Why are we doing that? You know what the answer is? If you look at the halacha works that describe, the reason given for doing that is in order to encourage the children to ask. Just to get their questioning juices flowing. We want our children to be asking lots of questions. So we do strange things. According to some opinions, the reason why we have karpas is that people should ask, what are we doing? So we're all about questions. And that's what the Seder is based upon. And even if you're by yourself, you have to ask yourself questions. Get your own questioning juices flowing. A few years ago, I was sitting, doing some work on my computer, my laptop, in it was like a public lounge or something, I don't remember exactly. And there was a couple there, an evangelical couple, and they were just having lunch. They had some wrapped up lunch from a deli or something, corned beef sandwich if I remember correctly, although I wasn't looking so closely. And I'm not sure exactly how the scoreboard works for evangelicals, but I know that if they get a Jew to convert and to accept JC as their Lord and Savior, it's like you get a lot of points. It's like, I don't know, it's like Triple Tuesdays or something, You get a Jew, you get lots of extra points. So there was an evangelical pastor who said outright, he said, I would rather convert 1 Jew than 100 non-Jews. So we're at a premium, okay? So here we are, I'm sitting there, I'm just minding my own business on my laptop. The evangelical couple sees me. They feel the need to come over, right? Here we go. This is the opportunity. Let's land the big fish, right? So they come over to me, hey, do you mind if we ask you a few questions? And I'm like, oh, yes, I really totally mind. I'd like to do some work here. No, sure, what would you like? And they start asking me these questions. So, I noticed that you're Jewish. Yeah, sure. How do you guys have atonement now? You ever heard that question? Because there's no sacrifice. That's the standard. It's an absurd question. They basically say, you don't have a temple anymore, which means you have no more sacrifices, so how do you get atonement? Of course, what they're trying to say is that we have atonement from Jesus Christ's blood. He's not around either, right? So you're telling us we don't have a temple, we don't have sacrifice anymore, so how do we get atonement? You don't have JC around either. He's not sitting here lying on a cross, bleeding out slowly. So okay, so your atonement happened from JC years ago, our atonement happened from the temple years ago. But that's not the real answer. The real answer, by the way, is that before the destruction already, God tells the prophets to tell the Jewish people, your atonement will happen through your mouth, through your prayer. But okay, anyway, just in case those guys come over, best idea, honestly, is if a missionary talks to you, just say, you know what, I'll be honest with you, I'd rather not discuss religion with you. Okay, the minute anybody says the words Isaiah 53, okay, that's your sign to end the conversation quickly, okay? Isaiah 53, code word, okay? That's their whole. They believe that Isaiah 53 is where the prophecy of the shepherd of the flock. They believe that refers to JC. It totally doesn't, by the way. If you'd like more materials on refuting missionaries, I'd be happy to supply you with some. But here I am. I just want to do my work on my laptop. I don't want to talk to missionaries, so I decided we're going to shut them down quickly. So here's this tactic, and feel free to use this one too. I'm like, all right. What do I get if I accept JC as my Lord and Savior? Oh, the guy lights up. He says, you're going to get eternal bliss. I say, really? What does that look like? He says, eternal bliss. It's amazing. The roads are paved with gold. Everyone's driving a Rolls Royce, this big 10,000 square foot mansions with a pool. I said, hold on a second. His eyes, he's like lit up. He's on a roll. He's on a soapbox that I just created right there for him. I'm like, wait a second. I said, when you die, what goes to heaven, your body or your soul? It's like, to think about it for a moment. It's like, your soul. I say, okay, do you think your soul cares about gold-paved roads? Do you think your soul cares about a Rolls Royce? Forget about the mechanics. How does your soul drive a Rolls Royce? But do you think your soul cares about a Rolls Royce? Okay, now his wife realizes, uh-oh, we just dug ourselves into a little hole. So she starts trying to climb out. She's like, well, it could be metaphorical, but of course he's a guy. He's not backing down for anything. He's like, yes, your soul in heaven wants it because Jesus wants to give it to him and wants the gold Rolls Royce. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, dude, your soul is a spiritual thing. It doesn't care about anything physical. It's beautiful. It's divine. It would never care about a physical thing like a Rolls Royce, which is just money and physical and... Okay, so his wife's already trying to do apologetics. He's slowly, dawns upon him, uh-oh, I don't even know what to say right now. And then he goes with this great line. Those who have faith don't ask questions. And those who ask questions don't have faith. To which I said, well, I've got to be honest with you. I don't have your faith, and I have questions. You don't have answers, so our conversation is done. Okay? But where does his faith come from? At a certain point, it's those who have faith don't ask questions. Those who ask questions don't have faith.
Right.
That's not Judaism.
No.
Do you know that in the Kabbalistic works, the night of the Seder is referred to as Leila de Mehemnusa? The night of faith. The purpose of the Seder night is not to get together with family and friends. The purpose of the Seder night is not to eat amazing food, although I hope you do. The purpose of the Seder night is to invigorate your faith by the telling over of the incredible miracles that God wrought on our behalf. As we spoke about in Maimonides last week, to tell over the Nisim and Niflaot, the wonders and the miracles that God did on our behalf, and to instill in ourselves the faith that God controls everything, all the forces of nature, as he did so openly at the time of the Exodus. That's the purpose of the evening, to instill it in us and to instill it in our families. So here's the fascinating thing, though. The night of Passover is the night of faith. But the night of faith in our tradition is filled with questions. Because we believe that the way to faith is not by shying away from questions, but rather by asking the questions, and not just asking the questions. Because there's two ways you can ask questions. You can tell questions or you can ask questions. Sometimes people come over to me and they've got a bone to grind with Torah observant Jewry or whatever it is. Oh yeah, Rabbi? Well, how come you guys are discriminatory? Because you don't allow men and women to pray together. Is that a question? No, that's really not a question. It's a platform. She's telling me her platform. Or he's telling me his platform. They're not really asking a question. They're not looking for an answer. It's a statement. It's telling me that they don't like what I'm doing because I'm discriminatory. How come you guys are discriminatory because you don't allow women and men to pray together? It's not saying, I was wondering. I noticed that in your synagogue, women and men sit separately. Why is that? That's a question that I'm really looking for the answer for. Why are you guys so discriminatory? You don't let men and women sit together. That's not a question. It's a statement. When we ask questions, it means I'm looking for the answer, number one. I really am looking for the answer. And I'm not just going to ask the question and harumph away. I'm going to dig. I'm going to dig until I find the answer. And then, mind you, once I find the answer, I then am compelled to do what the answer says. So, for example, if I would hear the answer, this is not telling you guys to leave your synagogues at all. But let's say, for example, the answer would be, a synagogue is really a house of worship to have conversations with God. which is a vertical conversation between me and God. But when I have all the genders mixed together, as is the natural human tendency, there's a lot of looking horizontally, a lot of checking out this person and that person. And some of you may know of certain synagogues where in Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur it becomes a fashion show. And that's not what it's supposed to be about. It's not supposed to be a place for this types of interaction. It's supposed to be for this interaction. So by putting up that little mechitza between the men and the women, now the men are able to focus upwards, the women are able to focus upwards. They're not split like that. And maybe if that makes sense to you, say, well, I'm going to start davening with a mechitza more often, because that's the truth. I found the truth in my life that I didn't consider before, I didn't know before. I met a boy last week. His name is John Minion. For any of you who are up on culture for kids, those are the Minions. You guys know the Minions? So you guys know what the names of the Minions are? Who knows the names of the Minions?
Saw the movie.
You don't know, Bela?
Never saw the movie.
Oh my gosh, okay, here we go. I have to look at this. I gotta teach you everything. The Minions are named Bob, Stuart, and Kevin. Okay?
Now we know.
Yeah, now you know. The Minions, Bob, Stuart, and Kevin. This guy's name is John Minion, and he has two uncles, one of whose name is Stuart, and one is named Bob. They don't have a Kevin. Isn't that fascinating? Their name is literally, their names have been named for many years, way before the Minions came out. But anyway, so John Minion today is living a very, he's Shabbos observant, he's living a very sort of Torah observant lifestyle. And I said to him, why? Why are you doing this? You came to University of Michigan a few years ago. You were doing nothing. Why are you doing this? He said, well, there was this rabbi who came to speak, and he talked about the divinity of the Torah, and I went over to fight with him afterwards. It's ridiculous. This Torah is not divine. It was written by some men a couple thousand years ago. Just today there's an article in the New York Times talking about, based on certain clues, based on an ancient shopping list they found, they're trying to date when the Torah was written, by whom, whatever. So he said, I came over to this rabbi and just went to go fight with him, so to speak. But at the end of the day, we spoke for hours, and he convinced me that it was divine. So what, I'm not going to do it now? That's a man of enormous integrity. He asked the question. He didn't just say the statement, oh, you know what, Rabbi? The Torah was written by a bunch of people 2,000 years ago. Maybe it was written by Ezra, whatever. He said, no. Why is it like this? And why is this like this? And how do you explain this? And he went, and he spent hours with this rabbi. And then he had the integrity to follow what he found. We believe that faith happens from truly asking questions. Truly asking questions. Saying, I'm interested. I want to know more. I'm going to figure this out. It may take me a lot of research. It may take me a lot of time. But a real question is something that seeks to be answered, and I'm going to do that. And that's how we find faith. Most of our presuppositions are often wrong. And in the areas of faith, they're probably wrong too. But we're only going to discover that if we ask questions honestly. The Jewish night of freedom is the night where we ask questions, is the night where we build faith. Slaves don't ask questions. When your boss comes in and says, hey, slave, go do X, Y, and Z, you're like, okay. I was in China a couple years ago. You talk to people. I love talking to people. You talk to people and you ask them about this thing, and they tell you about their lifestyle, their job, commutes, smog. You can talk about anything. You start saying to them, hey, how does it feel like to live under a communist regime? I'm sorry, I don't understand you. What? How does it feel to live under a communist regime? So sorry, I can't hear you. What? How does it feel to live under a communist regime? They're looking at me like, you stupid American. I'm not going to answer that question because we can't talk about that question here. Don't you get it? But I'm asking the question again and again as if they really can't hear me. Until finally, I finally realize they're not answering that question. Because they're not allowed to talk about that question in China. They can get put away for years just for asking the question. Slaves don't ask questions. Free people do. And guess what? Who enslaves us more than anybody? ourselves. We all have certain areas, certain lines of questioning that we don't allow ourselves to open up. Maybe I should be doing more. Maybe I could be a better father, mother, husband, wife, son, daughter, brother, sister, Jew, community member. Maybe I've got a ton of potential that's lying dormant. Those are questions that are very, very uncomfortable questions. We generally do not want to open up that can of worms. So we keep it locked away in the recesses of our mind. And once in a while, a little bit leaks out, and then we just shut it out really quickly. Let's go shopping or something. The key to freedom, if you really want to be free, is to ask questions. And the biggest impediment to our freedom is the questions we don't allow ourselves to ask ourselves. So, my dear friends, this year, on Passover, the night of freedom, the night of faith, let's not only tell over the story, which we should, and focus on the amazing miracles and wonders that God did for us, the knowledge that He will do it for us again like He did it for us in the past, and it will be even greater and bigger. But let's allow ourselves to really open up and ask those questions. Ask those questions of ourselves, and let some part of ourselves that's probably buried deep inside, let it out, and let it be free, to be big and to fly and to soar, like all of our neshamas totally are equipped to do and can do. And then we truly experience a night of freedom, a night of redemption, self-redemption, redeeming the parts of ourselves that are still enslaved. And, of course, an amazing Seder. Thank you all so much for coming, and have a wonderful Pesach.